just living puts us at risk of being scarred, whether physically or emotionally. Just living, just deciding to wake up puts us at risk of having more scars or more stories, depending on how you look at it. Welcome to another episode of the Preparing for Pregnancy After Loss podcast. This is your host, Natalie Facey, and I am coming to you live, or at least in this moment, from a cozy little corner in the space that I'm in. It is about to be dusk, then becoming nightfall, and I am holding so much gratitude for life, so much gratitude for this day, for this moment, and gratitude always for the ability and the privilege to connect with you in this way, wherever you are in the world. So grateful. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. If you've been tuning in for a while, welcome back. Glad to have you as part of this community. Yeah, I've been thinking about scars. I've been thinking about scars, and what prompted this for me was watching the movie the other day called Woman King, and I've gone through maybe months of not really watching anything, actually years of not really watching anything, and maybe every now and again watching something. But I happened to be on a flight coming back from a retreat, and I had the inspiration to tune into this movie that I've heard so much about but never paused to watch it. And I loved it. I loved it so much that after watching it the first time, I promptly restarted it, but the flight wasn't long enough for me to watch it twice. But really loved it. Definitely recommend it if you are into something historical and a little bit of action and some women's empowerment for people who've been enslaved or the ascendants of people who've been enslaved. Empowerment for the continent of Africa. Yeah, definitely check out the preview to see if that's something that's your vibe. And whether or not it's your vibe, this one thing is really the inspiration or a part of the inspiration for today's episode. So maybe I should share a bit of background about the movie in general. It's set in Africa, I think in the 1600s, and this was during the time of the transatlantic slave trade. So that is a big part of the context. And there is this group of warriors who are all femme-bodied, all female, and they are the warriors appointed by the king to protect the region that they're in. They go through rigorous training, and they're essentially the best warriors in this area that they're in and in this time period. A part of the movie is some younger, newer warriors joining the entire crew, and a part of joining, of course, is doing training, going through the hardships of getting things wrong and messing up, and the discomfort of pushing one's body beyond where it's been before. And then there was this test, the final test that would have all of the trainees who passed this test become officially a part of the army. And it was really rigorous, really challenging, and I won't give any part of it away in case you're interested in seeing the film. But at the end, well, I'll give this one part away. A part of the test was running through a whole bunch of thorns. And the bodies of these women, it was like scratched up, poked. The thorns were like into their, under their skin, into their flesh. So that, of course, was, I imagine, very painful. At the end, though, there was this character who's one of the main characters who won, who won the challenge, and the head of this female army came over to her and congratulated her. There was someone else, like a mentor, who was helping to take out the thorns from her skin. And the main character, who is the head of the army, was saying, "Oh, look at the scars." And she was saying two things at the same time, like, look at the scars, like, oh, almost like referring to the scars as things to be proud of. Like, look at the scars. And then she says, you'll get many more. You'll have many more scars, right? Like something to brag about. You'll have many more scars. And then the head of the army, who is this strong, courageous, beautiful woman, and has gone through just so many hardships and has really earned her place in the army and has earned the trust of the king, or the man king. And that's also a little bit about the context of the movie. So the head of the army was showing this new initiate her scars, like pointing to the different parts on her skin, her arms, her shoulders, the one on her forehead, above her eyes, just all over, and saying it with so much pride. You will have many more scars. And the other thing that she was saying is, and she was saying this to the mentor, right? So this younger person in the army who was a mentor of the new initiate, she was saying, make sure you get all the thorns out. Take all the thorns out. And I could tell that it was being said with emphasis. I could tell that it was something that we were meant to pay attention to as the audience. And what I'm getting from that is the scars are what's left over, right? The thorns cause the injury. The thorns are the things that create the hurt. And then the scars, that's what's healed over after the hurt. But the thorn isn't meant to stay in the flesh or stay in the skin or stay lodged into the body. The thorn, or the thing that causes the hurt, is meant to be removed. And the scars, they really are the evidence of what happened, right? The evidence of the hurt, the evidence of the experience, and also the evidence of the healing, the evidence of some journey that has been walked. And that's sitting with me in this really, really sweet and really, really beautiful way. And, some memories came up for me around my own body and scars. I'm remembering probably being, I don't know, maybe 11 or 12 and playing outside. I don't remember what I was doing, but I remember hearing a family member say, "Oh, be careful. Don't mess up your skin. You could be a model." And if you mess up your skin, you lose your chance of being a model. And so there was this messaging around scars being the thing that are no longer beautiful, scars being the thing that, that impact our beauty. And as I say that, my skin now has many scars, or evidence of many experiences of hurt. There's a scar, that I'm looking at right here from being in a car accident. And in my few minutes of consciousness being pulled out of this car, I asked for my shoes because I really liked my shoes and I was concerned that I only saw one foot of it. So yeah, there's that scar and there's that story that I share with others who are part of that experience with me. There is a scar here. Where is it? Okay, now I found it. There's a scar somewhere else on my skin from frying banana fritters from, attempting to make banana fritters and dropping the batter in, this pot of hot oil and having the oil splash up on my skin. Like, I know that might sound really gross. I'm sorry. But there's that story that I hold as I'm looking down on my skin right now. There are other, and these aren't necessarily scars, but there are other spots on my skin from being a toddler and being attacked by mosquitoes when I was living in a particular part of the island that had more mosquitoes than other parts. And there's scars from not paying attention and hitting my knee into something. And this is actually a recent one. And I sat with it and like kissed my knee and reminded myself to be gentle with myself. There's so many stories just all over my skin. So many stories all over my skin. And I don't know that I had never had the desire to be a model. That was never ever a goal of mine at any point in my life. But just thinking about that, right? Scars and how that might be perceived as being the opposite of beautiful, the opposite of beauty. And, as I think of beauty, I go back to other standards or other models that we're taught, other standards that we're taught that we should strive for in order to be considered acceptable or perfect. And really, that's the word that feels like it's the essence of this, which is maintaining perfection. Maintaining perfection. And so, in the experience of having scars, whether physical or emotional, there might be this story that we hold that we become imperfect with our scars. And so it then becomes our job to erase those scars, to remove them, or to hide them, right? At the very least, to hide them so that no one knows that we have those scars, so that we're not judged as being less than because of having those scars. And if possible, really erase them so that they don't have an impact on the image we're taught we're expected to have, the image of perfection, or they don't have an impact on people's perception of us, that we are in fact perfect. And so those are the two things that I've been holding, this idea of the scars as holding our stories. Really, our bodies hold our stories, right? And I might have shared in previous episodes that the body holds the imprint of all the experiences that we've gone through, that the body holds memory of that. And, I think it's interesting to bring the scars as this physical manifestation of the stories that we've lived, the lives that we've lived. And I am really wanting to, I'm going to use the word decolonize the way that I move in the world, because this idea of perfection, it comes from an oppressive framework. It comes from a framework that removes our humanity, a framework that really wants us to be, or to strive to be, the image of something that does not exist. Perfection does not exist, or not in the sense that most of us are taught to be perfect, right? Perfection in my mind is like the messy perfection. It's like the imperfect perfection. How it is imperfect and untamable, and how it is perfect. But if it's this version of perfection where it is meant to be void of what could be considered to be error, or void of messiness, or void of what's divergent and different, then that perfection actually does not exist. And we might see attempts at perfection in magazines, in movies. We might see it portrayed in the media. And I'm almost tempted to say that all the time that is made up. You know, like for someone who is being presented as the ideal image of beauty, that person is probably wearing makeup. There's usually some alteration that's done when these images of people are taken and then presented to us as what we should emulate. And so perfection does not exist. What exists is creative expression. What exists is diversity. What exists is really expression. Expression in infinite forms. And so, is it realistic? Is it human for me to expect to walk this planet and not have had my body be impacted by scars? Is it human to have that expectation? Is it human? Is it loving? Is it kind for me to have experienced having scars, for me to have gone through some experience that has now left me with scars, and to feel shame or guilt or even anger towards myself? I know that all of those emotions are possible. You know, they're in the space. They might be here. But is it kind for me to have that expectation of myself that my life should be one that is untainted? My life should be one that is unaffected by scars, like not impacted by scars. And I wonder if that person even exists, someone who has never experienced anything that led to a scar, whether physical or emotional. And I also wonder what kind of life that is, if that is even the case, that that person does exist. And I also want to make it clear that I'm not praising going through painful experiences or trauma. You know, I mentioned before that these people who were a part of the army were like strong, and I didn't mention this before, but like fierce, courageous, just like giving their all. So I'm not about to praise sacrificing ourselves and our bodies and celebrating trauma. That isn't what I'm saying. That isn't the essence of what I'm wanting to communicate. But what feels like the essence of it is that the scars, one, seem inevitable. They seem like a thing that happens as part of our human experience. Like if we're walking this planet, if we're moving this planet and having a life, it seems like going through something that causes hurt, whether on a physical level or emotional level, and to different degrees, it seems like it's a part of what it means to be human. And I also wonder too if the experiences that lead to the scars are also meant to be teachers and guides, and the experiences that lead to our evolution. And as I say that, the other thing that feels important to point out is not doing the spiritual bypassing. And I think I did an entire episode on this. Let me flip on this lamp as the night comes closer. Yeah. So the spiritual bypassing is, in going through a human experience, we might overlook the impact of that experience by saying, oh, maybe my soul chose this. Or it's meant to be a lesson. It's meant to be something that helps me to grow. Or I attracted it. So it's the way that we use spirituality to overlook the impact that we're experiencing as part of our humanness. And I think it's important to make room for both. So if a part of your belief of the world or your belief of yourself as a human in the world is that you are a soul or a spirit having this human incarnation, then there is the way that we can look at experiences and put them into the larger context of what we're here to do or experience as souls, how we're here to grow as souls, right? I think there's room for that. And I also think it's really, really important to acknowledge that within our human feeling bodies, physical, emotional, mental, these experiences are having an impact on us. So we're not just spiritual beings who are unimpacted by these physical human lives. We're feeling all of the stuff. We're feeling all the things on many, many levels, and the impact is happening on many, many levels. So yes, spiritual Natalie can think of different experiences and acknowledge the ways in which, this being, the ways in which there has been growth. And shit, that was hard. And ouch, sometimes it still hurts. There can be room for both. So a part of how I am holding this entire experience, and I'm still doing the processing, I'm still doing the collection, I'm still allowing for the downloads and the information to come through. But a part of how I'm holding it in this moment is that this body of mine, and I'm like touching my chest right now, this body of mine that has chosen to, or that has been chosen, this body of mine that is the vessel holding my soul, holding my spirit. It's the body that I use to move through this life experience. And this body of mine holds evidence of many stories, many experiences, many, many. It's like this body it's almost like being a storybook, right? So that I can point to each mark, most of them. Some of them I don't know where they came from. But I can point to each mark and tell you a story. And all of these stories make up who I am. These stories represent the life that I've lived. The beauty, the hurt, the hardships, the softness, the resilience that's built in my body, and also the places where I'm less resilient. It's this whole beautiful compilation of my expression on the planet at this time. And there's a way that two things that are coming up. I was about to say, oh, I don't want to change anything. There's a way that just feels really, really precious. There's a way that I am in this moment honoring and appreciating the unique composition of all of who I am, and that there isn't another energy on this planet that has this same composition, all of these same experiences. There's a way that I'm really honoring who I am in this moment. And I'm wanting to extend that to you and honor all of who you are on the planet in this moment. The stories that your body holds, the scars that can tell those stories, and just how rich, sacred all of that is. There's a way that I want to bow to myself in reverence and bow to you in reverence for the life that you've lived, for all the stories that make up who you are, and all the potential stories that may emerge from this moment. So that the physical appearance of the skin becomes so irrelevant. It becomes so irrelevant because, something about the life that was lived, the life that is being lived right now, has so much more value, so much more importance than whether or not it falls under some standard of beauty. Like in this movie, having the scars, in essence, felt like a standard of beauty. The scars and the stories led to the sense of pride. And I know that it might be hard to fully embody that going through a pregnancy journey that's really challenging and really painful. Maybe it's easier to think of this in theory versus map it to your own story, or maybe there are parts of your story where it's easier to map that, where it's easier to make that connection. What I'm feeling into overall, though, is there room to release any shame or guilt associated with having scars? Is there room to release from ourselves, release the expectation that we're meant to live lives that are perfect, that we're meant to live lives that are void of the ouch? And there are different things coming to mind right now, so I'm feeling into which direction to take this. Okay. So one of the things that was coming up is this book by Michael Newton called The Journey of Souls. It's one of the ones that I have to take my time with. Like, I tune in, I listen to it, I get in a whole lot of information, and then there's like a whole lot of downloads, and I release it, I give myself some spaciousness away from it. But essentially, Michael Newton, I think he was a psychologist, or he was working in the field of psychology, and was guiding people through past life regressions as part of his work. Past life regressions, hypnosis, so going beyond people's conscious awareness. As part of that work, and I think he stumbled upon this accidentally, was guiding people to, I'm going to call it the intermission between lives. The place where we go, the experience that we have between lives. And he was learning that people were describing being in a very similar place. So wherever this afterlife place is, people were describing having a very similar experience. Like, you're basically hearing the same things. And you're also hearing the same things around having spiritual guides who are with us throughout our entire lifetime, and sometimes across different lifetimes. And also the purpose or the intention that we come here to experience. I think having that perspective beyond the physical experience and beyond even one lifetime or several lifetimes, like looking at this larger experience of our expressions as souls, ourselves as souls, and that we come to earth having these experiences, and a part of why we're having these experiences is for our growth, our evolution, and to, depending on what your purpose is, to create some transformation either in your life, in the lives of other people, or on the planet in general. So there's a way that, like, I'm thinking of not sweating the small stuff. There's a way that the small scars on my skin, it's like, living in this body, right? Living in this body with me being this being who I've learned to call Natalie. What's the story that I get to tell in that afterlife place? What's the story that I get to tell when I have exited this physical body, and when my soul returns to that place where it had emerged from when it chose to be on this planet? And again, this is totally going to be dependent on what your belief system is. So if this isn't something that jives with you, don't feel the need to, attach to anything or convince yourself of anything or having to fight against anything. You can skip a few seconds or minutes or listen to another episode, right? But if it lands, if there's curiosity, then feel free to continue tuning in. Yeah, so from listening to this book, I really have been holding a broader perspective of my experience on the planet. And this isn't necessarily new, right? Because I already had that belief system. But just hearing stories after story of these people transitioning out of their physical bodies, meaning they die, and they move into the afterlife and they're greeted by other souls who were family members and partners and good friends, or they're greeted by their guides, and there is support in helping them transition, right? Because apparently the earth experience is like freaking hard. It's really hard. So if you're stressed out and wondering what the hell is going on in the world and why you chose to come on this planet, you're not alone. It's hard. You're not crazy. It is hard. It is hard. And yet we keep coming back. We keep coming back. And it doesn't mean it's not hard, right? Both of those things can be true. So as I think of myself as this soul, then I'm like less worried about the little scars on my body. But I also think of what are the stories that I get to tell? What's this life that I get to live? What are the stories that my body gets to hold? Like I really think of that time at some point in the future. I have no control over when this happens. But what are the stories that I will get to tell? What are the stories that my soul will know that we lived? And there are definitely stories that I've lived in my body that have pain associated to it. Stories with a lot of pain. Stories that I wonder if I would have changed it if I had the opportunity. And stories that I just would not change because the person who I grew into, I don't want to change that person. And strangely enough, or maybe not strangely enough, but those stories include the losses, the pregnancy losses. Like at this point, would I have changed the first pregnancy loss? I can honestly say no. Would I have changed the second loss where my baby was born and he lived for 6 weeks? God, I still, like that's a harder no, but it still feels like no. I can imagine what it would feel like to bring this baby home, to kiss his forehead and to sing him songs, and to, be a mom in that way. And would I have chosen that life? Yes. Yes. Could choose that life if it still meant that I would have the life that I'm living now. This is where I'm like, oh, can't I just have all the things? And who knows? right? But if I had to choose, if I were told you'd either have one or the other, then that would be hard. That would be hard because there is a way that I know myself on a deep, deep level that there has just been so much growth and so much beauty and so much inner discovery. And there is still the emergence and the unfolding of who I am. And so it's like, shit, would I have made, if I could turn back the hands of time, like, and I could have prevented that, would I have prevented it? And I'm like, this, like I'm literally scratching my head because I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. It's like, was all of that a requirement for the deep knowing that lives in my body right now? Was all of that a requirement for the ways that I'm able to show up for people and guide them in their transformation and healing? It's like, I don't know. That's a hard one. That's a hard one. I don't know. It's like, could I have not had that experience with the baby and still have all the knowing that I have right now? And it's like, I don't know. I don't know. But there's a way that that experience, I hold it in my body with acceptance. And I hold it in my body with a greater sense of peace and also a sense of trust that beauty still lies ahead for me. Oh, what am I saying? Like, I've been experiencing so much beauty in my life in small and magnificent ways. But I want to be specific that there is the desire that I have to be a mother to physical beings on the planet. And yeah, my heart still has room for that. My life still has room for that. And so there's a way that I'm holding all of it, all of those experiences. And, as I think of my body and my body representing the stories of my life, it just feels like there's so many stories to tell, and there's so much richness, and there's so much beauty, and there is so much growth. And there's so many ways that I have been prepared to support other people. Like, that feels key, right? So if I go back to the book, The Journey of Souls, from a really young age, I could see parts of my life purpose. I could see parts of why I decided to incarnate on this planet. And I'm talking like from 8, like, yeah, like from 8, I could see things that I was meant to do on this planet. I was having images of those things. And maybe in my late teens, early 20s, I was talking about being a vessel for healing. I didn't use that language, but that is essentially what I was saying, like supporting other people in their healing. In listening to this book, I'm doing the audio version, but in listening to this book, I've really inquired, how could I even be of service to people in moving through pain and grief and finding healing if that was not my journey? How would I know what that experience is if I had never gone through it? How could I sit with someone and know, have a strong sense of what they're going through, or even hold the knowing that the pain that they're holding in this moment, it's not going to be forever, but that pain is here with wisdom. How do I even sit in that space without having gone through that experience myself? How do I know without going through the thing that leads to the knowing? I'm not wanting to say to anyone that their loss or their challenge around pregnancy is happening for a reason. There could be a lot of problems with that depending on where someone is coming from. And that's what feels true for my journey. I wonder if those are experiences that I chose as a soul. I wonder if those are experiences that were not meant to happen. Or let me not say not meant to happen, but if those were experiences that happened, and if the soul that I am chose to alchemize that, chose to do something different with that, chose to transform that into a source of healing for myself and others. And after this life, I'm sure I will know. I'm sure I will know that, okay, that's what was going on. That was the plan. This is how I was on the plan. This is how I was like veered away from the plan, or whatever that reflection looks like. That, based on my understanding of the book, is also a part of the afterlife and the integration process when we're back into that realm. And so I don't know for sure. There's also another episode that I did on the difference between meaning and reason. So we might not know the reason why something occurred. However, we can create meaning, find meaning. And so there's me naming that I don't know if I chose to have those experiences of the pregnancy losses. I don't know if there was some soul agreement between me and my babies. I have had people do spiritual readings who said this soul knew that they weren't going to fully come through, fully incarnate as a human, and the experience they had as a soul being in your womb, that is the experience they wanted. They wanted that experience of being loved. Whatever my agreement was, then that was in alignment with my agreement. So I have gotten that guidance, and maybe that's true, maybe it's not. Maybe it's partially true. But what feels true in this moment is that I wouldn't be prepared to be doing the work that I'm doing unless I went through those experiences or something similar. That I can say with 100% certainty in this moment. Yeah. And what also feels true was the clarity that I had from a very young age that I was meant to be doing this kind of work. And so there's a way that the scars that I'm holding, physical, emotional, that all of those get to be in service of my expression as a human on this planet. There's also another audiobook that I've really been enjoying called Briefly Perfectly Human by Alua Arthur, and her name is spelled Alua Arthur, Arthur. And I had the fortune of sharing a virtual stage with Alua when both she and I and some other just like awesome humans were invited as speakers, presenters for the Global Healing Festival put on by Embodied Black Girl. Alua is awesome. Alua is awesome. And, reading her book and learning more about her life experience, it just leads to me admiring her even more. So she's a doula, or she's a death doula. And she also has a company, Going with Grace, where she teaches other people how to hold space as humans are making their transition out of the planet. Highly recommend the book because there is just a lot of joyfulness around the experience of life. And is it joyfulness? It's sort of like how precious life is. I think that I really reconnect with appreciating life, just like the preciousness, the beauty, and also like how short this life experience is. Like the love, the lost love, the longing for love, and all of the mix of experiences that we have that represent love, longing, and loss, whether that is with a person, thing, goal, whatever that is. The ways that we want to express love, that we've lost love, and that we long for more of it, and the ways that we do get to experience and enjoy it. That book in particular has also been reminding me of, I think, thinking of my life in general and the ways that I want it to really count. The ways that whenever I exit this planet, I want to exit it grinning. Because I really did live the life that I wanted to live. Scars and all. The scars with all the stories of this precious life that I lived. As I'm saying that, I'm being reminded that I sent out an email to members of my community, friends of mine, to ask, hey, anyone wanting to go dancing? I dance, I put on a few songs and I will dance as a part of my movement practice in the morning, or if I'm feeling tightness and tension in my body. And I also love going out and dancing, and that's a whole other experience. So there's the way that I am tuning into what are the things that I haven't been experiencing, and am I creating room for them? And the other thing that I'll say is there is always the risk of having a scar, right? Just stepping out of my home, getting into a vehicle, there is the risk of something that could happen, right? Being on the dance floor, there's a risk of something that could happen. Someone could step on my toes, I could step on someone's toes. There's just living puts us at risk of being scarred, whether physically or emotionally. Just living, just deciding to wake up puts us at risk of having more scars or more stories, depending on how you look at it. And it's both, right? Both the scars and the stories. I know that this episode was a lot of things. And maybe it was, an hour or so of me keeping you company. Maybe it was an hour or so of hearing something that brought you some inspiration, or that kindled some other thought process or some other desire. Maybe it was something that reminded you to be kind to yourself. There's a friend of mine who used to say, be sweet to yourself. Maybe it's something that reminds you that perfection does not actually exist. And so if there are any ways that you have been wanting to erase the pain from the past, to erase the scars, I wonder if instead they could become pieces of artwork in the gallery of your life, that they could become stories in your storybook, in the book that is your life. There's a way that I'm wanting us to be kind to ourselves and shifting this perspective from I've been tarnished, or I messed up, I didn't take the right route and now I'm paying for it, or I'm not winning at life, to really shift that narrative to one of this is the rich, interesting, storied life that I'm living. And if there is some awareness of something that you'd like to change, something that you'd like to be different, then perfect. What is that thing? How do you create room for the lessons that have emerged from those same difficult experiences? Is that or is that not a part of the reason why these difficult experiences are here, so that we grow as souls? So that we become the teachers of our lives and the teachers in the lives of other people? Yeah, that feels complete for now. So thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Thank you for allowing me to just flow with all the things that were coming up. I hope that today's episode was beneficial to you. And if it was, feel free to share it with someone else who you think it might also be beneficial to. If you'd like to stay in touch, you can find me on Instagram at The Birth Warriors. You can also send me an email, hello@nataliefacey.com. If you'd like to connect at any point in a free clarity call, a consultation call, whatever you want to call it. If you want 30 minutes of talking to me, you can schedule that. That is on my website. I think it's on the contact page and in a few different places. And my website is nataliefacey.com. And if you're feeling like you'd like to have space held for your own healing journey, whether that's once per week, every 2 weeks, once per month, if you feel like it would be really beneficial to have that support of someone sitting with you, walking with you, holding space as you move through the journey and find your strength, find your lessons, find your tools, develop tools, then feel free to reach out for that as well. So you can either email me again at hello@nataliefacey.com, or you can schedule one of those calls and we'll chat more about what that could look like. And of course, find pricing that works for you and that supports you on your journey. Okay? So sending you so much love and so much appreciation. It gives me so much joy to be able to do this, to connect with you in this way. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye for now.